dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
phone company to phone in a bomb threat, then you're held, you're responsible for phoning in a bomb threat, but the phone company is not responsible for transmitting that information because they don't discriminate. Now, there are also statutes that say, well, you're allowed to regulate according to community standards. What that means is it's not like anybody's guess, but there are some community standards that you're allowed to censor on. One of those community standards, though, I don't think is being a conservative, right? So that's the big question. If you want to hold this common carrier, which means you're immune from things like defamation and libel and all of that kind of stuff, there's a huge immunity from legal liability if you're just this common carrier. You can't sue the library because they have a book saying do something bad. But if the newspaper prints something that says do something bad, they may be more liable. So the way that you maintain this common carrier, this legal immunity for things, is by not discriminating or not controlling content except on the basis of this general community standards. Well, and I don't think that includes political viewpoints at all, as FedEx has pointed out. So Zuckerberg was grilled on this. Do you control for content? Are you a publisher rather than a neutral sort of common carrier? And I don't know. His answers to those questions, let's just say they led me down a rabbit hole of I wonder if anything further should be investigated regarding this. Because, sure, a private company, you say, oh, well, they can discriminate against whoever they want, and that certainly is true. That certainly is true, but if they start to discriminate, then they lose immunity, as far as I understand it, they lose immunity from particular legal repercussions, which they don't want to do. They really don't want to lose immunity from that, and Zuckerberg appeared to say that he didn't even really know much about the content of the laws that fundamentally govern the massive profits that his company accumulates, which, I don't know. I mean, there are lots of funny memes about his sort of wireless charging mat because he's a pretty short guy and so on, but I don't know. Oh, and by the way, people say, well, he wasn't under oath. You're still not allowed to lie to Congress. You can't be charged with perjury, but you're still not allowed to lie to Congress. So, to me, it's a fascinating question and a very interesting situation that you have this platform for human communication that seems to have a significant ability to affect political outcomes. Now, in general, that's because people aren't taught how to think. It's a failure of government schools that people are so easily, like if you think, oh, a couple of handful of Russian bots is going to change the outcome of the election, well, I would go back to why aren't children being taught how to think and reason and be critical thinkers, and that goes all the way back to, governments don't want that as a whole. So they want citizens who are programmable by governments, but they don't want citizens who are programmable by any other means. Now, it's a bit of a one color. It's not like a very delicate brush. It's one of those roller brushes, right? It gets everything, right? If you raise children to be susceptible to propaganda and programming and so on, well, tragically, this show and other shows accepted who try to teach people critical thinking, well, they're going to be programmable by a whole bunch of people. And this is where censorship comes from. Censorship fundamentally arises from an unwillingness, or perhaps even these days, an inability to teach children critical thinking, and therefore you have to censor because they have a big giant button called controllability, but the government is the one that wants to be able to push that button. Once other people figure it out, then the government wants to start censoring other people. It's like, only I sleep with the dark. So that is a very big and interesting question. Now that the perception is that social media influences or affects political outcomes, now suddenly there's this hyper-regulation and control and focus and all this kind of stuff that is going on. Now, again, if you go to some really conservative website and you apply for a job and you say, like, I'm a leftist and I want to write pro-leftist stuff, I'm a Marxist and I want to write pro-Marxist stuff, they're probably not going to hire you because they're going to say, well, listen, we're a conservative website. It's not really what we do here. So that's kind of upfront. That kind of upfrontedness is, to me, the big and foundational question. So if these companies are getting progressively more lefty, activisty, social justice warrior-y, then they need to tell you that up front. they need to say, we have a significant preference for leftist content, and we have significant opposition to conservative content. Let's just say that, for instance, right? Well, if they say that to you up front, that's fine. I mean, you don't go to some leftist, hyper-leftist site and think that they're going to give equal shrift to conservative viewpoints. That's kind of the way that they run. That's the way that they roll. So you know that going in. But if they say or imply, or it's taken for granted that they don't censor or control based upon political viewpoints, then they need to stick to that. Say, oh, well, you can censor whoever you want. Well, you can, but if you tell people you don't censor, but then you do, that seems to me not upfront at all, because then what happens is people start to build followers, and they invest lots of time and money and energy, and maybe they quit their jobs, maybe they go into debt to get studio equipment, and they start broadcasting or publishing or writing, blogging, on the assumption, because they've read through their terms of agreement where it doesn't say anything about discriminating against conservatives, and Ted Cruz was really good in this. And so if people say, well, no, there's nothing in here about discriminating against conservative viewpoints, so I guess I'm going to invest my time, money, and energy in building up a following on this platform, and then if it turns out that they do, in fact, censor or suppress conservative viewpoints or non-leftist viewpoints, well, that's not upfront. That's not honest at all. And this is a very sort of foundational thing and needs to be discussed. And I think at some point there's going to be lawsuits, and at some point in discovery there's going to be someone or some group who has to reveal the algorithms that they use, or the news censors or cultivators or whatever that they use. And this has come out before in some organizations, but it's going to be up front and center. And then if there is bias in the cultivation or promotion of particular viewpoints, which is not spelled out in the user agreement, well, it would be very interesting to see what happens from there. So there's sort of two final points I wanted to make. First of all, I don't actually blame any of the software programmers, the engineers in particular. I mean, I spent 15 years as a software entrepreneur. I built and grew and sold a company, and I was chief technical officer. I hired lots and lots of programmers, worked with them. It's a wonderful environment. It's a great and creative and powerful and passionate group of people that I worked with. Hope everyone's doing really well out there. But the engineers just want to solve problems. They're not particularly motivated by, well, let's promote this viewpoint, and let's suppress this viewpoint, and let's cultivate this perspective, and let's reject this perspective, and they're not so much into manipulation. They're not so much, they just want to make things run faster, be cooler, look better, work easier, whatever you name it. That's the engineer mindset. That's the software programmer mindset. And I was a programmer as well as chief technical officer, and that's what I love to do, was to solve problems. So the question is, with these tech companies that are founded with all of these engineers who love problem solving and don't usually have much of a political agenda to bake, or that they want to bake into the software, the question is, how does it happen? Well, basically, since the Second World War, this giant portal to leftism has opened up in companies, and it's called the HR department. And the HR department occurs for a number of reasons, but a lot of it has to do with quotas, with diversity, with women, and perhaps their sensitivity to particular work situations that formerly would be handled rather brusquely and abruptly by men. And so there's all of these manuals and all of these standards and all of these, to get access to certain government contracts, you need to have this percentage or that percentage of blacks or women and so on. And this is a big portal by which the leftists come in. Now, it's kind of a circular thing, because there just aren't as many female engineers as male engineers. And that's not a function of sexism. That's a function of freedom. When women have fewer economic opportunities, they tend to gravitate more towards the highest paying jobs, often of which, petroleum engineer and so on is male dominated. But then when women get more economic freedom, they tend to gravitate more towards, touchy-feely, relationship-based stuff, which doesn't mean low skill. It can be family doctor or whatever. But women will generally prefer to work with people a little bit more than men, and men a little bit more than women will generally prefer to work with things, objects, ideas, abstractions, and so on. And so when you say, well, we got to hire a bunch of women and we got to hire a bunch of other groups, then the question is, well, where do you put them? If there really aren't that many that can go productively or positively into the engineering department or, other sort of male-dominated spaces, where do you put them? Well, you put them in HR. And so this, where do you put all the women with women's studies who want to work at tech companies? Can you put them on the hardcore frontline coding arena? Can you make them big, deep, powerful project managers, given that they may also quit to have children? It becomes progressively, I guess pun intended, more difficult. So you have to create a department called HR to put the women where HR demands that you hire them. So this is one of the ways in which this portal of non-customer focused, non-rigorous, non-market-facing portals open up in an organization, and that's where the leftists in general go to sit. And then they start creating policies, and then they start dictating employee manuals, and then they start coming up with standards and practices, and then they mire you down in diversity training and sensitivity training, and next thing you know, James Damore is making the circuit because he dared to publish scientific facts about gender differences. So that's really, really important to understand, that you get these mandates, these affirmative action, these minority and female quotas for hiring in companies, and then you end up hiring a bunch of people you can't put into your core business. So what do? Well, you end up with them infecting, in a sense, the culture, like the leftists among them, and the leftists among all groups, but in this particular case, it's a little bit more. They end up infecting the culture through the portal of HR, changing things fundamentally, and then because the power created by the engineers wants to be harnessed by the people who prefer controlling people rather than things, you end up with the culture shifting underfoot and becoming in service to collectivism, in service to the totalitarian elements of the left, and in service of the equality of outcome rather than the equality of opportunity that characterizes central planning and the socialist style of thinking, to be as nice as possible, using the word thinking. So that's important. It's important to recognize what the problem here. The problem here is not the free market. The problem is, well, the amount of money that can be controlled in the political process is so prodigious that anyone who can change elections or alter elections or influence elections ends up in control of so much money. The trillions of dollars that change hands maybe differently based upon which political party or ideology is in power. So the fact that they're chasing all of the giant government money through influencing elections, that is where that particular ring of power comes from. And of course, the other is because there's all of these mandates and there's all of these, it's a strong business decision, or a positive business decision, to start imposing quotas and forcing the hire of minorities and women. But then the problem is, if they're not as qualified as, say, the whites and East Asians that you're hiring, then you have a problem, and then you get this particular, it's like a cult forming within the company that significantly influences the direction of the company, clogs up the system of engineering efficiency with rampant central planning, hyper-feels, emotionally manipulative ideology, which then, of course, creates a cycle of business where the new group that's too small to need an HR department can then replace the existing behemoth that have grown too big to survive the increasing gravity of their own ideology. But the last thing I'd say is, there's an old saying that says, if you can't see the product, you are the product. And this is something I think everyone really needs to figure out and really take some time, look in the mirror, think about this. Really, really important. The cat is already out of the bag. You can't put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste tube, as they say, and if your data's out there, your data's out there. It's been sold, repackaged, harvested. Facebook has admitted as much, and I'm sure there are lots of other companies that say massive amounts of user data has gotten out of the enclosure, has escaped the matrix, and is now running wild. And you can't recall that. You can't, right? It's just the way that it is. And it's pretty terrible stuff. But fundamentally, there is a sin called greed. And the sin called greed is very important. And there's also another saying that says nothing's more expensive than free. Nothing's more expensive. If you've ever been to one of those, like you go on vacation and they say, we'll give you a free breakfast. You just have to listen to a small information package about timeshares. And it's like, free breakfast? Yay. And it's like 4 hours later, you're chewing your way through ropes to try and get out of the enclosure. And, nothing's more expensive than free. nothing has crushed our capacity for rationality and philosophy than the free government schools. And look at students. Right? You can't. Some states you can't even have a drink. In Canada, Ontario, the legal drinking age is 19. You can't even have a drink, but you can sign up for unholy amounts of student loans in pursuit of a degree not driven by market forces, but by the university's desire to build another useless layer of bureaucracy and a little kingdom in academia, so you can end up in debt for $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 or more, and it's free. See, it's just, hey, I sign these papers, I get all this, and it literally can destroy your life. It can destroy your life. Nothing is more expensive than the appearance of free. Of course, there is no such thing as a free lunch, and anyone who tells you otherwise is using their syllables to bump into you so they can pick your wallet from the jostling on the other side. So, what is more expensive than free? And Facebook is, quote, free. Well, it's not, of course. They're strip mining your digital soul to sell advertising spots to advertisers. And, of course, sometimes advertisers or malicious third parties get their hands on that data. Your privacy, your security. What are you selling it for? So you don't have to pay 10 or 20 bucks a month to Facebook? Do you think you're saving 10 or 20 bucks a month? I don't know that you are. Pretty sure that you're not. How much would you pay to have all of your data recalled from the various places it's nestled into over the internet? Well, you can, right? It's like taking one of the dandelions, blow it, the little spores fly off. It's like 3 weeks later, I want them back. It's like, oh, they've gone undercover, baby, and they ain't coming back. And what is it worth? What is the sin of greed? I want to save 10 or 20 bucks a month. So, sure, you can pillage everything I do in order to serve me up ads. And maybe the ads are helpful. Maybe the ads help you save 50 bucks a month. Maybe. Or maybe they stimulate you to buy things you don't really need because they know how to target and they know what you might be looking for and so on. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. The problem with ads is, you go look for something. You will often look for it in terms of research. You know what you're doing. You're going to buy a laptop or a tablet or something. You know what you're doing, so you've probably gone off and bought it or have some good idea, read the reviews or whatever. And then it's like, hey, would you like to buy this thing that you researched yesterday? It's like, no, I already found out the information that I want. Thanks very much. But what is it worth? The bald fact and the bald reality, frankly, people, is that there are malevolent actors out there with a database that tells them more about you than most of your friends know. There are people out there with no good interests at heart who have harvested more information about you than maybe even your spouse knows, that they know you more intimately than your parents. They know you more intimately than your priest, asterisk confessionals not included. I mean, you have given up a lot in return for saving a few bucks. It's like that old Jim Morrison song, trading your hours for a handful of dimes. Well, trading your digital soul for a handful of dimes? It's an important question. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Right now, the economy, as it stands, says, why, yes, it is worth it. I guess the question becomes, is it going to be worth it tomorrow or the day after, now that everyone knows how much is being strip mined and sold across the world and how many of your intimate secrets are laid bare for neckbeards to pour over in foreign lands? It's an interesting question. What is the price of your soul?
Stefan Molyneux on YouTube. Check him out. Subscribe. Now, again, we're basically being placed in these social media type boxes where we're communicating with each other, but that's about it. It's really not getting out there. they claim they adjust their algorithms to really target people. But anybody that's ever boosted or advertised on Facebook, they kind of ask you, who are you trying to target? But then they limit your clicks and all that, and then how many are outside clicks, and then the simple fact that then we have to deal with now all the fake claims against accounts. YouTube's, with their copyright, that right there has ended so many YouTube accounts that when it comes to revenue, it basically just becomes a secondary upload site for those people instead of what others that post dangerous and idiotic things have made, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars off of it. They get their videos on the front site. Their videos trend. And it's really amazing because, again, I look back at the internet 10, 11 years ago. And it's completely turned upside down, where a lot of the sites we used were all small startups. And this kind of even goes back to a lot of what you see when you look locally. You tended to get a better service from the small local company store, the family-owned company, hardware store, little lumber yard, mattress, furniture store. But they were all just little local, family-owned, but you got great service. And you had really a lot of options still. To when big corporate stores come through and buy them up and just turn them into one of their stores, and if you wanted to go there, you would have went there originally. And that seems to be what social media and really the internet has done. It just really became the Walmart where there's no real true, personal service. I think people even crave for that small, family ran store anymore, because you really do get that personal touch. And I would almost want to see startups. You know how Facebook took out MySpace. We need the next evolution of this that takes it back to a small company that allows people to be people. There's a lot of testing with some of these newer little social media platforms that are popping up. You got, DTube that wants to try to rival YouTube and be a place where everybody's voice is heard. A lot of these are going cryptocurrency to do this. And, you have Steam. That's a good platform to post articles. Or do your blog from, Steam. And again, they have their own style cryptocurrency that you earn for your postings. But I almost want to see something too that in a way doesn't take us back in the advances in technology, but reminisces the culture that was behind a lot of that technology. So I think that's been lost to bureaucratic and political moves by a lot of these large tech companies. It's become more of that rather than the evolution. Alphabet Inc. and Google and all that, and their investments with their whatever contracts they have with DARPA and all that through Boston, I think it's Boston Dynamics. They believe by getting in bed with government, getting the government funding, they can create these things. But the problem is who are you creating them for? What are you creating them for? What advances in civilization do these make? Are you going for authoritarian? Or are you going for a free society? And I think that's where they miss their mark. They're completely off. Okay, I have one last clip. I want to play this from We Are Change. And this is the Nikola Tesla story they don't want you to know from Belgrade, Serbia.
Change.org here in Belgrade, Serbia, a place that prides itself on, of course, Nikola Tesla. And the information that I've been finding out here about Tesla is absolutely mind-blowing. I never knew it was the U.S. Department of Alien Property, along with the FBI and an MIT professor whose name was John G. Trump, Donald Trump's uncle, who were the ones who confiscated and looked into Tesla's documents that no one has yet seen, and of course is shrouded in mystery. Here in Belgrade, we're at the Tesla Research Center that is filled with academics, professors, and other people in the scientific field trying to uncover those mysteries. So let's go inside and see what they have to say. So I'm here at the International Scientific Nikola Tesla Research Heritage Center, which is a whole big mouthful, of course, with the director here. And a lot of the stuff that I'm finding out here is just absolutely fascinating. I also went through a Lotus test or Onyx test. I also went to the Kharjevos mirror. I'm sorry, I'm very bad at pronouncing a lot of these. Nikolai's Kozlai mirror. And one of the things that really stuck out to me from what you said is that Nikola Tesla wasn't only just a great mind, he was the greatest mind. And you're working here with a lot of...
Even walked the earth. The problem is that really we don't know anything about Nikola Tesla. Just some details from, for example, biography, he was born, where he was born, when, 100, 700 inventions, etc. But the Tesla was much more. Let's say he really now, we can say now, is the greatest, not one of the greatest. He's definitely the greatest scientist of our civilization.
He was definitely way before his time. He was very revolutionary.
Yes. He was let's say, few thousand years ahead of his time, and the future belongs to Tesla. And if we come back to Tesla's work and character, we can make some progress. Tesla said that he left technical base for the future civilization. The problem is how to go advance, because the base is first of all free energy. If we have free energy for the planet, we can make a very big jump into
peace and a whole way better life.
First of all, we would like to live in a peace. Because it is a shame for our civilization that every problem we should solve by the war.
Yeah, and have to deal with Saudi Arabia and the petrodollar and Iran and all these difficult problems that come just from energy. But one thing that I found really fascinating is that a lot of Nikola Tesla's work is actually still secret.
Yes.
It
is true. It is true. First of all, I was living in Russia 26 years, and I was come back to Belgrade to develop this Tesla's Heritage Center. And I must tell you that all patents in Russia is still until state secret.
Still classified. Top secrets. And the same thing we're learning from the United States, because Nikola Tesla, a lot of the work that he did, he never filed patents for. And there's decades of work that he did that was never kind of officially brought to the world or presented to the world. And when he died, I also heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that the U.S. Department of Alien Property, right, the U.S. government with the FBI, and also an MIT scientist named John G. Trump, who worked with military radar technology, came in there and actually confiscated a lot of it, kept it secret from the people, and now you're also working with a lot of scholars, a lot of professors, a lot of scientists, committing a lot of experiments, trying to unfold this kind of mind that he's working on. But the story is just amazing that a lot of his secrets are, were literally gone through by Donald Trump's uncle. And
of the president. Trump.
Right now. Yeah.
But we don't know anything about that time. It is really a big mystery what's happened, for example, between 5th and 7th of January, because 2 days Tesla didn't appear from his hotel's room. What's happened? How it was possible that he simply died, if he died. Yeah. He died. And on the other side, as I remember, on the 10th of January, he had appointment with the wife of Eleonora, with Eleonora Roosevelt, wife of the U.S. President Roosevelt. So this period is really remains for researching what's really happened.
Some people say that also that he was working possibly on time travel, free energy, telepathy, consciousness. I kind of heard it described as the science of consciousness, and that he was not only way above in his time with technological kind of revolutions, but also kind of spiritual inside revolutions. Is there more information that you could tell us, maybe about if there was like meditation involved, or the kind of spiritual aspect of Tesla that you were able to uncover with some of the professors?
It is also a matter for researching of all scientists, by all scientists all over the world, because this part of Tesla's life, it is also not known yet. But in any case, for example, we don't know the sources of his acknowledgement, how it was possible that he got from cosmic power or universe or mind, cosmic mind, ideas. And in his mind laboratory, he got perfect invention. Just after that to apply into practice.
I kind of find very interesting is that Tesla was kind of like the original kind of hippie. There's a lot of spiritual symbology in his work. He wasn't doing anything for money. He ended up getting screwed over by all these kind of robber barons, J.P. Morgan Chase, Thomas Edison, and he still did it because he wanted to make the kind of world a better place, and it wasn't really a monetary incentive, which was really fascinating. Can you talk more about kind of his progression and what kind of things do you see him going down this path?
Only we can suppose. Not to prove. Tesla was sent. Tesla was sent to the earth to do something for humankind and human being, and he was not interested in money, in fortune, and he lived alone in different hotels, and we should pay more attention to his life, and he knew very well about his goal, about his task, about his purpose of life, and he was very good informed about cosmic task. And you cannot find a lot of scientists with the cosmic task. You can see in the history of the science, it is just a few scientists devoted to the human being, to our civilization. Because of that, as I told you, the cosmic value of his heritage is the symphony, is order to the man. the man like the strongest being in cosmos. Only due to serious problem in our life, material position, salaries, bills, etc., we should fight for the surviving, not to develop what we have inside. It is our spirit, and we should do it much more to be more spiritual being.
Thank you so much for this big information download and all the tests and all the experiments we did here. If there's one thing that there's definitely a fact is that Tesla is not getting the attention he deserves, especially historically,
Yes.
for all the things that he came up with and did for kind of human civilization. I want to thank you for trying to preserve that and studying and researching and having all these scholars here and doing all these experiments that you guys are doing here. Is there anything else that you would like to say about the work that you do here or just Tesla by himself?
Our goal is not only to preserve Tesla's heritage, for example, not only to preserve, but to develop it, to research it, to study a lot of more than 160,000 documents stayed in the unique museum Nikola Tesla in the world. It is in Belgrade here, and you should go there next time. We should study these documents, especially it is about 40,000 documents, very important for the scientist. It is in a process of digitalization, and we should wait to stay to see. And you can see, for example, this box. It was gift. The same you can find the same box you can find in the museum. Because our general consul of the Yugoslav embassy in New York at that time, he bought it for example, for Tesla, and it is a long story to explain how we got it, etc. But it is very interesting and very sorry that unique support, financial support for Tesla was given by Yugoslavia before Tesla died. It is a really pity, and this time of period we also should study why America didn't find the way to provide for Tesla comfortable life in a hotel, to at least to pay all bills for the hotel cost. It is a pity, really, and we should discover the documents, how he was living in the hotel, especially. He paid a lot of attention to his health, because Tesla planned to live at least 140 years. What's happened? And of course, 86 years to live, it is not a short life, but in any case, he planned to live much more, double more. Because of that, sometimes we study, for example, his style of life, what he was eating, what was the menu for the breakfast, for the dinner, etc. He was rejected, for example, cigarettes, alcohol, sugar, etc. It was a healthy way of life, and he was walking every day at least 10 miles, etc. So he was so interesting person in all aspects of his life. So like joke, if he didn't become the greatest scientist, he could become the greatest cooking because he follow a menu and especially foods for in his life.
Thank you again so much for that information download. If you want more information about the International Scientific Nikola Tesla Research Heritage Center here in Belgrade, Serbia, the link, of course, will be in the description below. If you're in Serbia, definitely check it out. They have lectures and experiments doing all this awesome stuff. We're going to be in contact. I definitely want to come back here when you guys are doing more trips and more different kind of studies. Thank you once again for all the work you're doing to really preserve and understand and to build on top of all the amazing work that Tesla did before.
You're always welcome.
We Are Change, wearechange.org, We Are Change on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. Now, with, you look at Tesla's story, and I mean, really research Tesla. Research the facts that are out there on Tesla, and you look at his story, and it's reminiscent of what's going on today. And when I say that, I mean in the fact that history is being rewritten. Facts are being manipulated or lied. There's a lot of just flat out lies. And even though we have social media and all this, we still have the ability to go a little old school. A lot of the information that we have, a lot of the collections of information, facts, old books that you can digitally get already. Print these off, collect these. It takes up room, but if you can have that little extra room, buy books. Don't let history be rewritten. And then that also gives you a resource for your children when they are researching things. Give them the resources that are going to give them facts. Because even when I was in school, the facts weren't taught. I think I heard about Tesla from a teacher, but it was way after we learned about Edison and never heard anything about Tesla. Now, I have this article. Something comes up. Now, I've seen this one at Reason.com, and there were, I believe this group basically put out false information that was, in a way, completely writing history in a false narrative. And this article from Reason, Southern Poverty Law Center scraps its anti-Muslim hate list. Last month, I wrote a piece calling out the Southern Poverty Law Center, the country's self-appointed watchdog of hate groups. And this is by Shika Dalmia. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. But for putting Ayan Irasi Ali, the Somali victim of genital mutilation, and Majid Nawaz, a Muslim militant turned reformer, on its anti-Muslim hate list, along with genuine Islamophobes like Pamela Geller. And yesterday came word that the SPLC quietly scrapped its list called the Journalist Manual Field Guide to Anti-Muslim Extremists. Poof, it's gone. I wish I could take credit for helping SPLC see the light, but I suspect the real reason was that Nawaz recently retained Claire Locke, the same firm that went after Rolling Stone for publishing the University of Virginia rape confabulation, to sue SPLC for defamation. Nawaz claims that SPLC showed a reckless disregard for the truth. The legal bar for proving actual malice is to make a defamation lawsuit stick when it put him on its hate list. And instead of fighting him in court, SPLC seems to have folded like a four-flusher. Worse, unlike most responsible outfits that issue a correction when they make a mistake, SPLC removed its list without a word. Now, if SPLC has indeed backed down, one can't be sure because it didn't respond to queries for comment. It can't be because it is wanting for resources like some poor nonprofit operating out of a trailer park. It owns one of the plushest buildings in Alabama and has net assets upward of $328 million that it's been doubling literally every decade. No, it's because it probably didn't want probing litigation to expose just how hollow its name and shame exercise is. Nawaz believes that Islam is a religion of peace and is publicly spooked by the rising Islamophobia in the West. How could he not be he is after all a practicing Muslim in Pakistan, descendant living in Britain. He routinely condemns anti-Muslim bigotry and insists that Muslim profiling is counterproductive and ineffective on Fox News to boot. So how did he land on a list of people who allegedly routinely espouse a wide range of utter falsehoods, all designed to make Muslims appear as bloodthirsty terrorists or people intent on undermining American constitutional freedoms? And they put this guy on a hate list, Muslim hate list. And they've also had their, what was it? Was it a domestic terrorist watch list or something like that? And they had We Are Change, InfoWars, Oath Keepers. What was it? There were a few other ones that were literally just Tea Party. I'm pretty sure was one of them too. But that was something we knew was coming down the ladder eventually. Because that's not the first place we've seen constitutional or libertarian, the Oath Keeper type people, Ron Paul supporters. You can go back to the MIAC report. And if you don't know what the MIAC report is, you really need to look that up and research it. Because they were basically calling us, anybody that supported Ron Paul, had a Don't Tread on Me flag. Basically, anybody that was a patriot is a possible domestic terrorist. Basically, like a feeling of a Red Dawn type characterization of anybody that supported Ron Paul. And some people claim that, well, it was an overreaction. There was people that were put on watch lists that couldn't get on a plane because, well, they worked on Ron Paul's campaign or was somehow associated. And look at, that person's Ron Paul sticker. Luckily, we're not there anymore, but we still have a lot of issues we're facing. Sorry. Breaking news alert, but I guess it wasn't. Let me double check here. But, again, back to collecting books and a lot of philosophy, not only collecting them, make sure you yourself understand them, because right now the left, through the media and their little puppet organizations, are pushing what a lot of Americans are not really truly supporting. They can sit there and act like, oh, Americans are behind gun control, and it's already backing off again. Emotions get high right after an incident like that. We're still luckier than a lot of people around the world. In a lot of socialist, communist, dictatorial, ran countries, we're still holding on to a little bit of freedom, and it's really up to us to make sure that gets passed down, that idea of freedom. And we can't let it be erased. So eventually they're not going to be able to win when it comes to ideas of freedom. It's going to again turn around. but how long is it going to take, and what is the country going to look like once it does? Now, we have a few people that are still part of Congress that have a grasp of what freedom truly means. You know, you have Justin Amash, you have Rand Paul, there's others in Congress that they're kind of sitting there in the shadow, ready to strike with facts and truth, but they need backup, and I think we need to really start pushing those more constitutional libertarian philosophy people that truly believe in freedom, that understand prohibition doesn't work, that understand taxation doesn't help. If we get to a point where we no longer can speak or think without every word, every emotional outbreak, everything is recorded. How safe do you feel about your privacy? How safe do you feel about your family's privacy? And like I've said for years, I believe that the tech community outside of these large organizations, they're going to be the ones to revolutionize the way we use the internet and the way we use our electronics, so we can be private, so we can be safe and not have everything intercepted and watched. Years ago we talked about people creating technology to make basically where I can connect to you down the road and you connect to someone else, and you create a network that people that are, connected to the internet, that information can flow. And, I thought that was out of this world, but they're already getting there. There's already betas out there in different markets. See, now, if we get to a point where we can't speak freely, and